Chapter 2, Transformation. I heard LunaraBlackSin call out to Drox. It was like the walls were so thin. I could hear everything they spoke about, although I don't think they were trying to keep it from me. Drox! LunaraBlackSin yelled in a firm voice. Footsteps thumped on the stone floor as he spoke back. Vale, leaving so soon? I guess that's what we get when you take on 2 jobs at once. Drox's voice sounded so light and joyful, but Vale's voice sounded like he was pissed. It just reminded me of him ordering Jade's guards around. I sat up in the bed and looked at the door as I listened. Thump! Vale must have dropped his bags on the floor while speaking in a dry, heated tone. I want her to feel welcomed here. She means more than gold to me. Drox responded without a breath. Of course! What do you take me for? Honor and respect? You want her safe? I shall keep her safe. Vale snapped back. Not safe. Welcomed. Vale yelled out, which made me jump. If any of you harm her or make her feel unwelcomed before one of my men come here, I will simply take your life. Growling and snarling was heard as Vale growled back. Someone spoke in the manner. Filthy demon, ordering our leader. Vale's voice became cold and deep. Filthy demon is right. I have no shame ripping your spine out. Drox chimed in. All right, we get it. Vale must have picked up his bag and left as the manor grew cold and silent. I felt anger for him leaving and rage for the act of acting as if I was nothing but a fang. But overall, I felt worry, not only for him, but myself. I wondered who he was sending to me and how my days at this manor was going to be like. Hounds and vampires still fighting? For what reason? I pondered this until I fell asleep. Vale got on May and clicked his teeth. He stopped next to Max as he put a hand on his head and spoke low. Watch her. She's reckless, I can tell. Max pushed into his hand and made a purr-like sound in agreement. May brushed up to Max before taking off. I spent the first few days locked in my room or on top of the roof when no one was around, although I still felt the eyes glaring at me. Once in a while I would hear someone call me a filthy bloodsucker. I mostly ignored it, wondering when Vale would send his friend or whatever to get me. Though I hated the feeling of being babysat, I hated the feeling I got here more. One day while I was lying in my bed, I heard a knock on the door as the sound of footsteps filled the halls. I'm here to pick up a woman named Lunara. I sat up wondering if this is it. Was he the one Vale sent to come get me? I packed my bags as Drox's voice called out. Ah, yes, you must be the person Vale sent. She's right upstairs. I'll show you the way. My heart pounded as I wondered who this person was. As the footsteps got closer, all packed up, the sound of slight knock would echo off my walls. Come in. Watching the door slowly open, I would see Drox standing next to a man with light orange hair, green eyes, and freckles. His body was covered in odd markings. He was wearing just normal peasant clothes, but something about him seemed familiar. Hello, Lunara. I'm here to escort you. Walking in and picking up my bag. I hate to rush you, but we are in a bit of a rush. Shaking my head, I nodded. Oh, right, yeah, okay, thanks, Drox, for letting me stay here. You're welcome. Just let Vale know you did feel welcomed. Drox would speak as I rushed off after the strange person. Once outside, Max would walk over to us, getting in between the two of us as he snorted at the stranger. I had never seen him act that way. With how Max was acting only confirmed the doubts I had. If you don't mind, who exactly sent you to come get me? The man would raise a brow at me as if what I asked was a stupid question. Well, Vale, of course. I am to take you to him. I took a step back. Well, if that's true, you wouldn't mind telling me what he looks like then? His expression changed to a more frustrated look. We don't have time for this crazy questioning. We are going to be late. Let's go. Taking hold of my wrist, he would try to drag me towards the woods, only making Max freak out, running at him. Pulling out a sword, he would place it to my neck, making Max freeze in place. Max, go find help. I would speak out as we stepped into the woods, slowly moving backwards, letting the man lead me away until his guard was down. I wondered what Vale was doing right now. Vale had traveled for a while, maybe even days, until he reached a very small part of the woods. His eyes gray-blue as he hops off of May and walked deeper into the depths of the woods. He sees a young boy leaning on a rock, resting his eyes closed. His hair bright blue and shaggy, covering his face up to his nose. Vale walked up to him and tilted his head to the side. He parted his lips to speak, but the boy on the ground spoke first. "Hello, Vale." He flipped open his eyes and looked up, letting his blue hair part ways to reveal one blue eye and one green. His skin so pale with dark bags under his eyes. He placed something in his mouth before speaking again. "You followed me here with the seal, I'm guessing." His voice was dragged and deep for a young boy. Vale nods to him as he spoke in a lighter tone. "I seek you out for a job to do. There is a woman I am traveling with, and I want you to take her to Blackmont safely." The man pulled his feet to the floor, standing up and looking at him with an expression of, "Do I really have to?" Vale, without words, nods to him. He responds, "Where is she? What is she? Are there people after her? Where will you be? Does she know I'm playing babysitter?" Vale waited until he was done asking what he wished. Lockwood, pure blood, vampire, yes, job. After answering him back, Vale turned on his heels and walked away back to his shadow horse. Black stood there, staring at Vale through his hair. A real vampire. Interesting. He smiles as he ate the candy in his mouth. I was pulled through the woods, tripping over rocks and logs as I struggled to get myself free. "Enough, princess!" the man would scream out as we stepped into the open fields. My mouth hung open as I looked around the area, knowing exactly where I was. A bunch of guards and people with lab coats came rushing towards us. Two of the guards took hold of my arm as the male with black hair, glasses, and a lab coat walked over, injecting me with some type of liquid. "Welcome back home, 01X. We did miss you." His voice sounded faint as I slowly slipped away from this world, going into a sleep state. "No," was all I could manage to get out in a bit of a whisper before slipping away. As I fell into the sleep-like state, I could somewhat feel Vale, though I wasn't sure how. He had left to help a poor young lady named Rayra from this mystic land. It took him a few days to take care of her situation, also telling her to meet him at Blackmont, after taking care of her and healing the wounds on her, while he was traveling back to gather info on the vampiric banshees' plans in war. All the while, the blue-haired boy walked at a slow rate to Lockwood Manor. He thought many things over and played around with a little black book upon eating candy non-stop. As he got closer to the hound's lands, he felt the unsettling yellow glares from every hound. He took a sharp breath and just walked with his head high as he showed them he wasn't bothered by them watching him. Once he was at the door of the manor, a young hound greeted him. "Hello, who are you?" "I'm Coda, and I will be super strong like Drock." The boy with the blue hair just looked down at him and patted his head, then pushed through the door and looked around for the man with markings on his body. The man walked down the steps in an angry manner. "What's this? Who are you to walk into my home?" The boy tilted his head up and looked at Drox. With a light smirk and a mouthful of candy, he pulled one foot behind the other and itched it. Lunara, where is she? We need to go to Blackmont." Drox felt as if his body was disrespectful as he snapped his jaw at him. The boy walked up to him and looked him closer. "You have nice teeth, but I really need this lady to come with me." Drox would then understand that this was the person Vale was sending, but he was nothing but a boy. He narrowed his eyes at him. "She's not here. Someone else took her to leave, saying he was sent by Vale as well." The boy leans on the steps, sitting now in a squat. "That's unfortunate. See, you have made a mistake," he mumbles to himself. Mistake? A steak? He looked up at the hound named Drox. If I do not find her, Phil will kill you all, he says as he pulled a light purple flower and set it on the steps before him before leaving. Drox yells at him, "What's this for?" The boy replies with a strike of fire, "Your funeral, of course." Lilacs are stunning this time of year. Drox was so unsure how to respond, he didn't speak. Black turned away from Drox and headed towards the door. As he walked back, looking around the lands as he sees a path that isn't much used, but what faintly there is in the growth. If I was a person who wanted to hide a person, I'd take the path that most don't see. He turned on his bare heels and started to walk deeper into the forest down a windy path, his feet getting cut up and his hair getting sweaty as he walked. "Hey, vamp lady, where are you?" he says as he was hunting for the person who took her from the manor. "This is annoying. After being freed, I just wanted to see the world, not see the world and hunt people. Damn it, I don't like favors." He spoke to himself, not aware others may hear him through the seal, much similar to Luna's that Vale had put on him a long time ago. He stops and looked at the branches that were broken off, a sign of struggle, along with dragging marks. The boy took a deep breath and started to run. Soon his body would steam of blue and green smoke that was poison as he ran towards the castle. As I started to wake, my vision was still a bit blurry, and all I could seem to focus on was the flickering of the candle near me. "Ah, so you're finally awake." The voice was deep as my heart sank to my stomach. What did you do to me?" I would try to get up as the sound of rattling metal echoed in my ear. My vision would clear as I took in the sight around me. I was back in my bedroom, chained to my bed with an IV attached to my arm to a bag filled with what I had to guess was my own blood. Sitting across the room was Morgan, notebook on his lap, writing down what he had learned from experiments he practiced on with my blood along with stuff he picked up from the other labs. "Sorry for the chains, Lunara, but after your little stunt, we had to make sure it wouldn't happen again." Closing the book, he walked over to where I laid, taking the IV out of my arm and pulling off the blood bag. Looking at my arm where the seal still was, his face would turn to the look of disgust. "That will be the first to go. Filthy creatures, demons are. I can't believe my daughter, a pureblood vampire, would let one of those disgusting things brand you." Lifting his left arm, he swung his palm down, slapping me across the face. "We will be continuing where we left off, and this time you don't have that lance to help you escape." Walking away from my bed, Morgan would take hold of a hot iron. "But for now, let's start with that mark." Pulling on the chains as hard as I could, I would twist and turn my body, trying to find any weak points in the links. "You stay away from me," I spat back at him as he got closer. The scent of burning flesh filled the air as I screamed out in pain. Removing the hot iron from my skin, Morgan would look down. "It's still fucking there? Are you kidding me?" Unchaining my legs, he took hold of the chains around my wrists, pulling them off the banister. He would give them a hard yank as he yanked at them, pulling me off the bed and onto the floor. Taking a handful of my hair, he would pull me to my feet, a small yelp of pain escaping my mouth as I tried not to give him the satisfaction of seeing me in any sort of pain at all. "You did this to yourself, dear daughter." His mouth was so close to my ear I could feel the heat from his breath. As he spoke, releasing my hair, he walked off, dragging me behind him, the feeling of the chains cutting into my wrist. "Where are we going?" I would call out, trying to keep up with him, as he rushed through the halls and out the front door, the hot sun burning my flesh, turning it a bright pink faster than usual. "I hope you recall our training," was all he said in a response as we walked into the woods heading towards the training ground. A girl with light gray purple hair stood decked out in armor and a sword, no expression on her face. "Lacey, is that you?" I recalled the old memories of my dear old friend from the past, Experiment 021. She was one of the labs my father stole out of fascination. He managed to reprogram her to do his bidding, which was teaching me how to fight and keep his record safe. Morgan would drop the chains onto the floor as he looked at Lacey. Your job is to attack Luna, to fight her to the death. One of you will not be coming out of this alive. He would grin as he leaned against one of the trees. I would stand there in disbelief, my hand still bound, looking at Lacey. What are you waiting for? An invitation? Go! Morgan would bark as Lacey ran towards me, her sword raised. Max was running through the forest as he went back towards Lockwood, looking to catch May's scent to warn Vale when he was coming across BlackSin. Turning in mid-run, he ran as fast as he could in the opposite direction, hoping to make it to one of them in time. After an hour of running, he caught up to Black, standing at the edge of the woods near some castle, as he nudged the back of his head, letting out a snort. Black walked and stopped at the castle. He tilted his head at the smell of fresh flesh burning in the air. His green and blue eyes narrowed a little as he felt a hot snort of a breath on his neck, moving his blue hair forth like a breeze. Cloud of smoke rolling by him, he spoke in a low voice, but dragged as he pulled his hand up and turned into Max. Hello, Max. Take me to her. He sighs as he walked, following the shadow horse that was trying to rush him. Black placed a hand into his pocket. As he walked, Max nearly slammed a hoof down into the ground in a mad fashion. He started to pull and tug on his loose black shirt. Black rolled his eyes and walked faster. Max decided to leave Black and turn into black smoke, seeking out Vale. Black stood walking and watched the shadow horse leave him dry behind. He kind of smirked as he climbed a tree and hopped from one to the other until he saw 3 people, and on one being a subject like him. He lowers his body down on the branch and tilted his head, watching them fight. The male seemed to be so mad, Black didn't understand. He pops a small candy into his mouth and watches the young lady not being able to keep up with the lab weapon. Black licked his fingers from the candy, and a seal much like Luna's was on his tongue. He began to talk to her through the fight, telling her which way to move and how hard to strike a blow, her weak points, and even a getaway route to flee the fight. He spoke in a dry, dragged voice, saying he was in the trees and lacing her weapon with an illness that will just make her move slower and get tired with a fever. He placed a spike candy into his mouth as he hung his legs down. He watched all 3 of them and even offered to fight for her if she needed. Lastly, he says in a dragged voice, Valeson Hills Black told me to take you to Blackmont. At the moment, your home is being ambushed by hunters for your family. Watching Lacey move, her speed picking up as she came closer, I would lift my hand in the air so that when the weapon came down, it would clash with the chain. Clang! The link would break as it fell to my sides. Taking a step back, Lacey would get ready for the next attack. Watching her move, I swiftly stepped back, hearing a voice I had never heard before speak within my own head. If you can manage to take out your opponent, there is a clear spot to the right, next to town to the east. It might take the men a while before he can follow. I'm lacing your attacker's weapon with poison. Don't head back towards your home. There's hunters already there looking for you, family. Oh, Vale sent me. I'm taking you to Blackmont. Unsure how to respond back, I just listened as well, swinging the chains towards Lacey, using them like a whip. Lacey, who was becoming weaker as she held her own weapon, would push forward, knowing this fight was life or death. I'm in the trees. Don't bother to look for me. Letting out a small growl as I mutter under my breath, Great, so the babysitter is here to watch and not help. Dodging yet another attack, I would manage to take hold of Lacey's weapon, slamming its hilt into her stomach. As my eyes glowed a bright red, the wind would pick up around them, moving my hands in a circular motion. The wind would pick up the chains and shackles that once clung to my wrist, were now shattered,
whipping around the air, its metal fragments taking a bite out of everyone close by. Morgan would get sent flying back as he screamed with rage till his head hit a nearby boulder. Lacey, running after him, would try to help him up as she looked back at me. "You're free now. Leave him be." Lacey would nod to me in thanks, not sure how to speak to say thank you. She just took off, running towards her freedom. The wind would calm as the sound of footsteps could be heard taking off in the direction Black had mentioned. I ran, not sure if he would follow, nor really caring at this point. Small fragments of heated metal hit Black's body and face. He grit his teeth as he jumped from branch to branch until he landed right behind me. He ran beside me for a while, his blue hair being forced back by the speed they were running. He glanced over at me in a dress and heels. With his green and blue eyes, he kind of yelled, "I'm Black, and I guess I'll be your guide to Blackmont." Once they got off her lands, Black would slow down, entering a new town and heavy gates. Guards would stop them and yell with their weapons out, "Who goes there?" Black stopped and looked up at the towering men. Thinking as fast as he could, he grabbed hold of me, biting my tongue to hide the pain I was feeling. I let it slide as Black spoke in sure words, meaning he may not know what he was saying, but the way he said it was strong. "This young lady is a guest to your town. She will only have the best that coin can buy. Show some respect." The guards scrambled to their feet and opened the gates. He walked into the town and seized a woman with a long cloth and with a hood. He pulled it off her and handed her some coin. She was mad until the gold coin glistened in the sun rays. He wrapped me in it and pulled the hood down on her as he spoke. "Don't speak and keep your head down." He walked to an inn and handed his arm around her as he spoke in a big smile. "Hello, and what a nice place this is. I'd like one room for us, please." The woman that ran the inn smiled and spoke. "Oh, what a lovely mate you have. Please, enjoy your room," she said with a smile and a wink as her cheek got red. Black didn't understand anything about what she was saying or doing, and he guided me to the steps. "Thank you, I guess. And you should get that eye checked at. It's a little twitchy." He walked up the steps with her and closed the door, and proceeds to lock it with the key that was given. He leans on the wall and pops the pink candy in his mouth as he ran his fingers through his blue hair, fixing it to cover his eyes again. He sighs as he wasn't sure if making it to Blackmont was going to be easy. He thought for a moment as he tries to think of a map, not expecting Luna to ask much of him, thinking or hoping Vale filled her in. Ripping the cloak from my body, I would turn to face him full of rage. "Who the fuck do you think you are, telling me to keep silent? And what the hell was with the cloak? Lastly, don't ever grab me like that. I was just in shackles. My wrist is killing me. Even worse now, thanks to you. Oh, by the way, the woman down there now thinks we are together." She would tap her foot for a second as she looked him up and down. "I need to feed. Not that I really want to, but I'm hurt and it's the quickest way for me to get over it." Walking up to him, I would lean close so my lips was hovering just above his neck. "Since you seem to be the cause of some of my pain, you wouldn't mind helping me then, right?" A small smirk would come to my face, for now I was just messing with him. The moment the yelling bust out of me, his blue and green eyes flipped open, and he pressed his body firmly to the wall, leaning on a weak table that snapped under him. He then tumbles on the floor on his back, looking up at me with wide eyes, not expecting me to freak out. Upon seeing her eyes so dark, he was scared. He brought the wrong person with him, not understanding vampires at all. His face flushed of any and all color, as if he saw something horrific happen. He pulled himself off the floorboard and leaned on the wall as little cuts on his body was dripping with sweat and blood. He was a loss of words, and the whole time of her talking, and he only understood pain and feed. Once she walked up to him and came really close to his neck. He pressed his whole body to the wall and moved his face to the other way, as he says in a small, dragged voice, "You can't feed on me. I'll make you ill." He closed his eyes tightly as he pressed his lips together, trying to pull whatever poison in his body to one side, his heart beating too so fast it made the room so noisy, his body shaking from fear of her safety from himself. When she moved away and he slides down the wall, making a bit of a pained face, he was a young man doing a man's job. That much would be clear after she got as close as she did. He hung his head as he looked down at the number on his arm. 3173, and almost tears came down his face. He took in a deep breath and wipes his face from blood, sweat, and tears, and nods to her as he spoke. Then let's feed. He glanced out the window and saw the sun setting and was at awe for a moment before he opened the door and walked out, putting a candy in his mouth. He looked at the inn woman, checking in a big man, and his eyes widened a bit, but played it cool until they fed. Walking into the streets, I observed everyone around for a bit, looking from one couple to the next, spotting a male sitting in the shadows. He was scoping out for his next victim when his eyes fell on me, knowing I had to think fast as I started going from couple to couple. "Excuse me, please. I need help. I was jumped and I have gotten myself hurt. I just need a place to crash. I can pay, I promise." The man walked out of the shadows and over to me, where he tapped my shoulder, seeing me dressed in the nines. As I turned to face him, fake tears streaming down my face. "I have a place. Why don't you head there, and we can patch you up there?" Wrapping my arms around him, I would cry into his shoulders. "Oh, would you? Thank you. You're so kind. How can I ever repay you? Oh, I know." Leaning closer into him, his face would turn a light pink as he wrapped his arms around me. Going up on my toes a bit, my lips grazed across his neck as I slightly opened my mouth, letting my fangs sink deep within. But from anyone who was watching us, it looked more like a loving kiss of passion. The male would let out a slight gasp before his eyes glazed over as I was brought back to the place within the man's head, at the Black Lake on a boat, as the memories came flooding in. I need to stop or I'll kill him. Forcing myself back, my skin back to a pale color and the marks gone, and my eyes a bright red as I looked him directly in the eyes. They would glow a crimson red as I spoke clearly. "I was never here. You didn't see me. You just got attacked by a rabid animal." Stepping away after hearing the guy repeat what I said back as he walked away. My body would shake as I always hated feeding for exactly that reason. Black was watching me choose my victim, interested in what I am and how it worked. I didn't realize he was there just observing me the entire time until I turned around and spotted him a few steps away. Walking over to him, a bit embarrassed for what I had just done. I need to change. I stand out too much." I didn't even meet his eyes as I turned, looking down at my feet. Black watched her red eyes after feeding, catching himself wishing he was the male she was just feeding on. Not understanding what his own thoughts were, he lightly put his hand up to my shoulder as he spoke without looking at my face. "Stay here for a moment while I feed." His voice low when he talked to me, as he walked past me to a man sitting on a table smoking. He walked up to him and sat next to him for a while before speaking. "Can I have some?" The man looked at Black up and down for a moment as he shrugged and handed the lit smoke to him. Upon Black taking the stick with a burning tip, he dropped it on the ground and leaned in and kissed him as he pulled his arms around him, pulling each memory of this man's life up that had to do with kissing and or sex. Black went forth and took in the energy his body gave off, and Black's skin glossed over like he had perfect skin like a doll. A group of people yelling out words like homo and fag and laughing or making crying sounds. Black stood over and lays the man down on the ground as he says sorry. He walked up to the group of people that mocked him heavily about liking other men. Black stood before them with his knees bent and hands in his pockets, his blue hair covering his full expression, but death was in his eyes. The group grew quiet as Black said in a low, deep, dragged tone, "I am not a fag. I was feeding on him." He tilted his head up and swung not only his fist up,
He swung his leg in a 360, pulling them all to the floor. He stood up and leaned over top of them to look down as he said in a low voice, "Filthy humans." A group curled in fear or ran as he walked over and past me with tears running down his face. He spoke in a low, childish tone. "All right, let's go get you new clothes." He walked towards the shop with the logo of a needle and thread. I was at a loss of words, following Black in silence, knowing I had to say something to make him feel better. I finally spoke up when they got to the shop. "Hey, you shouldn't let people get to you like that. Who cares what they think? So that's the way you have to feed to survive. It's embarrassing and uncomfortable without the comments from those around you. It's not like you chose to live this life." Black shrugged me off from what I was saying about feeding as I thought about how I feed and how much I hate it, and just being who I am altogether. Stepping into the store, I walked around looking at some of the clothing. Brown, and hey look, more brown. Muttering under my breath, pulling some random clothes off the rack, I walked into one of the dressing curtains and tried them all on. It took me a while to pick out an outfit, for I had never bought my own clothes before, as I came out in brown pants, top, and boots, my gown in my arms. Walking to the front desk, I placed the dress onto the desk. "I'd like to exchange this for the clothes I'm wearing, please." The woman's eyes would widen as she felt the fabric and looked at its design. "This dress is worth a lot more than what you have on, dear." I would shrug as the woman opened a pouch, pulled out some coins, handing over, seeing a small belt and a coin bag, pointing to them. "I'll take those as well." Giving her back a few coins. He watched me haggle to salespeople with what was on my body, and once I came out, he scuffed as he says in a dragged tone, "You look like a tree's trunk." He walked around grabbing stuff from here and there that looked of good traveling clothing, of not fighting type of clothing. He pushed a pile of women's clothing on the desktop and hands over a few gold coins. The woman looked at him for a moment as she counted what he took and looked at me as I only bought one outfit and gave over royal clothes. She gave him a sack to put all of it in. He turned away, walking with me to a different shop as I picked out some weapons. Taking hold of a small dagger, my eyes widen as I see the bows. Pulling one off of the rack, my fingers would glide along. It's not the best of quality. It's only made from elm, but it'll do. Taking a bunch of arrows and a case for them, I walked them over to the desk. Not having enough coins left over from the dress, I would hand over my necklace. This should cover the rest of the cost. The man's eyebrow would go up. What am I to do with this? Feeling bad for me, he ran his hand through his hair and accepted it anyway. As I took hold of my stuff, would turn to look to see if Black was still with me. He took a look at the bow and thought all of what this man was selling was cheaply made. He turned to what I bought and shook his head as his blue and green eyes glared at the bow in my hand, as he could tell that this would break within days. He walked out of the shop, placing a candy in his mouth from his pocket. He turned and looked at me. "Go back to the inn. I will be back." He turned on his feet and walked away. I watched as Black take off running, walking through the streets, my eyes wandering from shop to shop. Stopping in front of one of the shops, I caught a glimpse of what looked like as my face made a weird expression. Yup, brown's not my color. I look weird. Heading towards the library, I would buy some bottles of ink, enough to fill a bucket at least. Placing them into a bag, I walked back towards the inn, nodding to the inn lady, making sure not to make eye contact. I went right up to my room. Walking into the bathroom with the black ink, I poured them into the tub. Stripping myself from my clothes, I tossed them into the tub to sit while waiting for the ink to darken my clothes. I wrapped myself up with the sheets on the bed, tying it so I can move my arms without holding it. Walking over to the weapons I pulled the dagger out, a little out of
out of the town, nodding to the guards as Black exited the gates. "I will be back. Here's a toll." He handed over a few coins to each guard as he ran off into the woods. He hunted for a while until his eyes met with a beast with a large bloody horn. Black climbed into the trees, pulling the dagger out from between his belt and pants. He jumped down lightly on his feet as the unicorn turned its head to Black, the long intense feel from the horned beast. He took in a deep breath as he lowers his head to the ground. He put his hands to his side as he walked slowly, his feet barely picking up as he moved closer. He let the horned horse sniff his hair, checking him out. He pulled his unarmed hand up and half the speed he was walking, his fingers shaking as his hand glides along the snout up to its forehead, to its long mane. He slowly and quietly spoke. "I don't want your blood. I won't hurt you. I just want some." He cut the beast's hair in long strikes, maybe about 3 feet. He drops the dagger, lowering his head even more in a bow as a thank you. The horned horse stomped its hoof as it shook its head in noise and huffs. Black spoke as he kneels down, picking the weapon up. He sheaths it. When he looked up, the horned beast ran into the woods. He stood up and looked at the sky, guessing that took 3 hours. He walked back to the gates of the town they were staying at. The guards let him back in and placed the bag of clothing and the long black hair in it as he went to a bakery shop. He walked in and spoke to the young woman, an older lady. "Can I get 2 small peach pies? Oh, and that thing you guys use to make the chewy candy?" The older lady smiled as she spoke in a shaky, sweet voice. Taffy puller? What do you need with that?" Black responds with, I need to twist a bowstring." The older woman nodded slightly to him as she pulled the 3 leather straps off of her clothing as she pushed Black to a table. She ties them on the back of the chair and braided them nicely and smiles at him. Black's eyes light up with a smirk as he hugged the woman. "Thank you." The older lady smiles even more, patting his back and pinched his cheeks. The other person called him over for the pies and ran over and paid for it and ran out the door. He ran to the inn and up the steps, not wanting to try to talk to the inn lady at all. He opened the door and walked into the room to see me with a dagger to my hair. "Don't use the tub, I'm using it." As I tilted the blade at an angle, chopping my hair so that it was now shoulder length and somewhat covering my face. "There, now I look less like some princess, don't you think?" Looking up at Black to see him with the stuff he bought and then some. He set the bag down and pulled the long black hair from the bag and put it on the small table, making sure not to separate the hairs. He responds to me in a low, dragged tone. "You look nice. Better this way." He turned and looked at me for a moment as he spoke more to me. "This new look seems like you more." He wondered if he got the words clear enough. "So where did you go?" Getting up and crossing the room, I dropped the hair I'd just cut off into a wastebasket and sat in the corner. Walking into the bathroom and removing the clothing from the tub, now black as the night sky and dripping wet, hanging them up to dry on a rack. He watched me hang up the dripping ink clothing as he let out a breath. "You know, inking clothing doesn't keep it black. As soon as you put it on, it's going to stain your body, and if you wet it again, it will fade fast." He walked into the bathroom and looked around at the mess of ink, then back out the room. He leaned on the wall for a moment as he thought for a moment. "Well, I never had to buy my own clothes before, forget dyeing them, so excuse me if I don't know the right way of doing it. If you're so smart, why don't you go do it then?"
Stomping off into the bathroom, I would turn the water on, letting the water run down my body as the memories of today would flood, pondering about what I was doing and trying to figure out what kind of person Black was and how long it was going to take Vale to do his job. Getting out of the tub, I wrapped myself back up and walked out, my hair cold and damp and wavy, as I looked at Black's bags, wondering what he had gotten. Everything in the bag is yours to wear. Nothing in there is mine. He pulled his hair to the side and watched me grab clothing to get dressed. So, do you eat food or just blood? He pulled his shirt off and lays it on the chair. As he was about to declothe himself in front of me, he stopped and told himself he wasn't allowed to do that. She was a young lady. Luna, there's a hunter here as well, so try not to go out that much without a weapon or me. While listening to me respond, Black went into the bathroom and took his clothes off, getting into the shower. He left the door open to hear me while letting the warm water hit his body. Letting the sheet fall, I would pick up the clothes that was placed on the bed and get myself dressed. Once fully clothed, I walked over to the table where the food sat. The pastries look good. Where did you get them? Black listened as I called out to him when his body picked up the energy of the hunter. He washed up fast and jumped out, wrapping his lower half in a cloth. Rushing out of the bathroom, he pushed me up on the wall near the door as we hear a loud knock that was too heavy for the inn lady. What do you think you're looking down at me with his hair pulled back, dripping wet? He panicked, pressing his lips into mine. My eyes widened with a mix of shock and anger, for I never had kissed anyone before, and the fact that he forced it on me had me with mixed emotions. As he banged his hands above me, making as much sound as possible, he pulled his lips off of mine and looked down at me as he brought his hand up to his lips to tell me not to speak. Black pulled his cloth up a bit and opened the door, looking at the man rubbing the back of his neck, and had a flushed face as he spoke. Do you mind? Me and my person are, well, you see, The hunter's eyes widened a bit and pulled the poster paper up and spoke. Sorry, but I'm looking for this woman. Black looked down at the paper and tilted his head. Wow, she's something. I wish I met a princess. The hunter nods as he spoke. All right, well, I'm staying at this inn. If you see her, ask the inn lady for Axe. Black nods and responded, Of course, can't have vampires killing everything they see. Black forced a chuckle while the hunter joined in on laughing a deep laugh. Black closed the door and lays on the bed, breathing heavily, trying to gather himself, hoping he didn't give himself away. He sits up, looked down at his number on his arm, and tilted his head, sighing, Damn it. He walked back into the bathroom and dressed himself fast, knowing he might get yelled at by Luna. Unsure if the hunter was still there, I used a more silent tone as I spoke through my teeth. You didn't have to kiss me to keep me silent, or even pushed against the door. My face was a silent, slight pink color, while my eyes were looking everywhere but his. Seeing that they are now looking for me here, we probably should leave. Turning away from him, I opened the door. I'll be right back. Without waiting for his response, I walked out the door to see the hunter still traveling down the hall, knocking on doors. Letting my hair fall in front of my face, Black watched me walk out the door, and his temper went through the roof as he rushed to gather everything in the bags they had and pulled my wet black ink clothes in a different bag. As he flung it over his shoulder, he ran out the door and pulled me to his side, wrapping his arm around me. He spoke through his teeth in an angry fashion. I swear you are trouble. He smiles as he tried to hold me lovingly as they walked past the hunter. He waved at him with a smirk, hoping he didn't know what this was the person he was looking for. The hunter Axe followed behind them a little away as Black whispers, I'm sorry, okay, but we need to move in fast.
He pushed her on a building as he leaned into her neck, bobbing his head as if to show off he couldn't keep his hands off her. He whispers in a firm voice, "I'm going to pull your clothing up like a bad boy. I want you to slap me and yell at me for doing this out in the public." Black pulled his hand down my hip, making sure not to really touch anything around my leg, now this being harder as I wasn't wearing a dress. He made it look like he was feeling up my leg without even touching me. Waiting for a slap, he lightly nodded to me as he got very close to my lips and lipped the words, "now." The hunter watched them as his brow goes up as he spoke. "They sure seem like they can't get their hands off each other." He looked down at the wanted paper and up a few times, trying to make out if it's the same person. Slap! The sound of my hand smacking his face could be heard as people walked by would stop and look at them to see what's going on. "What'd you take me for? I'm not some hooker off the street. I don't like to be pawed at while out in public. This is something more for behind closed doors. Get off me." A red hand mark would show brightly on Black's face as I pushed him off of me, hoping that our act was convincing enough to fool the hunter. Whispers would start up all around them, and because of my hearing, I could pick up most of them. "She just right out slapped him." "Yeah, I know, and in public." "Did you see the color of her eyes? Sort of looked the same on the wanted poster." Pushing off the wall, I weaved through the people, making sure to get lost in the crowd as I looked for a safe way out of town. Black's face was forced to the right as his face spread with redness in the shape of her hand as he just fell into the building wall, tilting his head down as all he could say in his head was, "Dang, she packs a punch." He picked up the bags he dropped and walked over to the hunter named Axe and spoke as he was going back to the inn. "Don't have ladies in your life." The hunter felt bad and stopped him in his tracks with a firm hand on his shoulder. For a moment Black kept his eyes on the ground, reading his body to fight in need as the intensity of his eyes was strong. Axe speaks in a hearty laugh. "Let's get a drink, kid. On me." Black relaxed and tilted his head up as he rubbed the back of his head. "Yeah, I can go for a drink. She kinda a handful of drama." Axe chuckled even more and pushed him into a pub that smelled of sweaty men and puke. Black's face got pale and grossed out as Axe spoke loudly. "Get used to it, boy. This is where the men drink their hate and sorrows for the woman they fuck." 6 men pulled a drink up, yelling, "Hear, hear," to what he said, while all of them laughed and talked about why they were in the pub. One says in a slur, "They're all needy bitches. Make more money, stop drinking so much. We don't have sex anymore." He burped as he slammed his drink down. "Bitch, I don't touch you because you smell of horse shit and look like a piece of fruit that went bad." Axe ordered 2 rums and sat down next to the guy talking about his mate in an ill manner with Black, but he smiles and nods, and he listens. Axe handed him the rum drink and spoke. "Bottoms up, boy." He slapped Black on his back because he couldn't swallow it, and coughed a few times as his face became bright red at the burning of it. Ow, it hurts and burns. Why does it, burn?" They chuckled as they ordered different drinks for Black to see him drink them, and by the time they were done, they were all drunk. And Black stood up wobbly on his feet and says, "She was all grrr. I don't like kiss you and bye," he says as he made a smacking motion and almost falling over while entertaining them. He stumbled and waddled out the pub as they laughed and mimicked what he did, only to crack up laughing more. Black tried to focus on what he was doing and heading out with his bag and out of the gates with a flimsy way of walking, looking like he was ready to puke up everything. All he did was make sounds. And this brings the end of Chapter 2. I do hope you guys all enjoyed. Like, subscribe, and comment down below. Check out our links, and stay tuned for the next chapter. Have a great day.